I think I'll just give a very high-level overview of the sector first, so that we can understand what is really the context of what we discussed in terms of dispute resolution. So basically, globally, the oil and gas sector is divided into three sectors, three segments. That's upstream. These are the exploration and development companies. And then there are midstream, which are the refineries, and then there are downstream, which are the oil marketing company, the gas distribution companies. The type of contracts that we have, because it is a regulated sector and the government is the owner of the mineral resources. So in the upstream sector, we have prospecting licenses, concession agreements, leases, and joint operating agreements. The first three are obviously with the government and the exploration companies. The fourth one is between the working interest owners, who are the partners in a particular project. And then the kind of dispute resolution that you have at the moment is there is government regulation, and then there is arbitration in terms of all of these agreements. This arbitration is slightly unique from other dispute resolution clauses. It first provides for an ICSID arbitration if the working interest owner is a foreign entity. If for any reason ICSID does not take jurisdiction, then the matter can be referred to ICC. But if both the parties are domestic, then it is a domestic arbitration. That presents its own challenges, but we'll talk about that. If you can please move on. Then in the midstream, it is generally contracts between refineries and E&P companies. The government has an involvement there as well, because the allocation of the resources that have been explored and developed is within the control of the federal government. And then the contracts between E&P companies and refineries for the crude supplies, they generally contain negotiated arbitration clauses, so there is a large variety of them. And in terms of finished products, again, because these are negotiated contracts, again, there is a variety of arbitration clauses that they go by. But with the midstreams and the downstream, the other change is that there is now a regulator, Oil and Gas Regulation Authority, which has one of the functions is to resolve disputes between the licensees. And the midstream and the downstream sector need license to operate in Pakistan. So as a result, you have a regulated dispute resolution process available as well. So if we move to the downstream, that's essentially the distribution. Now, OMC is that the oil marketing companies for the liquid fuels, and the gas distribution for the gaseous energy. They have bulk consumer and retail consumers. In the gas sector, there are very few bulk consumers. Normally, the large industries are also treated as retail consumer. The bulk consumer were actually the powerhouses which are being supplied gas. There again, negotiated arbitration clauses, but mostly provide for foreign arbitrations than local arbitration. With the retail consumer, the dispute resolution process is with the regulator, but a large number of them end up in courts as well. In the first half, there are very few disputes that end up in courts. But the unique thing about oil and gas sector is than most of the other sectors, the government is not only the regulator, but the government is also a competitor, because in each of the three segments of the oil and gas sector, either the government is undertaking business directly or through what we call state-owned enterprises that are companies mostly listed on the stock exchanges, but they are controlled by the federal government, and we have statutory framework where the government can take policy decisions and undertake some guidelines to resolve the dispute. And that presents a challenge and an opportunity also, I think most of us in Pakistan would have heard about circular debt. That is a classic example of a challenge and opportunity at the same time, because the way circular debt arises is when the government does not pay its electricity bill, the electricity company does not pay the gas distribution company for the gas distribution company does not pay the exploration company for the gas it has supplied, and that's why it's called circular. And it is growing, unfortunately, at a phenomenal speed. This has not ended up in any court as yet because the government continues to work on a resolution. But unfortunately, that resolution is not coming around for the reason that all the public sector players in the oil and gas are willing to listen to whatever the government is saying and just go along. And that is not for their compliance. That is simply because nobody wants to take a decision, because if they take a decision, then they will have to be accountable. And the private sector players, unfortunately, are the ones who continue to engage and find the resolution, but they haven't been because the size of the issue is phenomenal. The last reported figures of circular debt only in the energy sector is about 5.72 trillion rupees. So there, I think, where the this opens the opportunity for a statutory framework for mediation, because for the public sector, the biggest problem is to take a decision and take responsibility for the decision. And that is the reason that most of the public sector disputes that end up in the courts, they go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and unless everything is exhausted, they will not implement anything. But if we have a mandatory statutory mediation arrangement where experts can help bring around a solution, that might make life easier for the public sector. The government has just taken one such step, that in taxation cases now, there is a mandatory alternative dispute resolution if the assessee in a tax claim is a public sector organization. And I think there is something similar that if it is introduced in the oil and gas sector, that might also be helpful to resolve a number of issues. And that is particularly so because most of the disputes in the oil and gas sector are also very technical in nature, and therefore for the normal litigation to resolve that issue is extremely challenging. The two things where it can help, because for example in the upstream sector, the government and the energy department acts as an informal regulator, and most of the time they are unable to come up with a solution that is helpful for both the parties. This being a public sector authority, any decision that anybody does not like gets challenged in the court. But if they introduce a mandatory mediation at that stage, that might help to not only to resolve the issues, but then also not bring the disputes to the courts.